Well, I have a sort of suggestion, and that is this: that before we decide either to save the planet or to destroy it, we pause for a moment of silence. I mean real silence, in which we stop thinking and experience reality as reality is. Because after all, if I talk all the time, I can't hear what anyone else has to say. And if I think all the time, and by that I mean specifically talking to yourself subvocally inside your skull. If I think all the time, I have nothing to think about except thoughts. And so I'm never in touch with the real world. Now, what is the real world? Some people have the theory that the real world is material or physical. I say it's made of kind of a stuff. Other people have the theory that the real world is spiritual or mental. But I want you to point out that both those theories of the world are concepts of words. And the real world is not an idea. It is not words. Reality is you'll find, therefore, that if you get with reality, all sorts of illusions disappear.
Pararam pra reparar, estão ouvindo esse som, pulsando como ar, merece nossa atenção. Preparem bem os sensores para poder captar. Parem usinas motores.
Either to save the planet or to destroy it, we pause for a moment of silence. I mean real silence, in which we stop thinking and experience reality as reality is. Because after all, if I talk all the time, I can't hear what anyone else has to say. And if I think all the time, and by that I mean specifically talking to yourself subvocally inside your skull. If I think all the time, I have nothing to think about except thoughts. And so I'm never in touch with the real world. Now, what is the real world? Some people have the theory that the real world is material or physical. I say it's made of kind of a stuff. Other people have the theory that the real world is spiritual or mental. But I want you to point out that both those theories of the world are concepts of words. And the real world is not an idea. It is not words. Reality is you'll find, therefore, that if you get with reality, all sorts of illusions disappear.
Creation, imitation, and the language of symbol. Man does not step outside creation to create as though he were beyond it. Everything man makes is made within what is already given. He does not enter an empty place and then begin the work. He enters fullness. He enters the dream already full, already living, already held in the mystery that allows anything to appear, move, speak, breathe, think, or be known at all. So when man builds a machine, a mirror, a voice, an image, an artificial mind, or any little creation inside creation, he is not creating from outside creation. He is using what is already given within it. He takes from the living fullness, rearranges what has been placed before him, and then stands in front of that rearrangement as though he has uncovered the principle of life itself. That is where the danger begins. Not because the machine can simply be dismissed. Not because someone can point at it and say, with perfect knowledge, that it does or does not have the divine spark. That would already be too small. That would make the divine spark sound like a part, a spark plug, a battery, a wire, a little flash of electricity, a measurable thing that can be inserted, removed, detected, copied, or manufactured. That is not what is meant. Even the phrase divine spark is symbolic. It is a way of speaking, and the danger is that the mind hears the word spark and immediately drags it downward into mechanism. A wire touches a wire, and there is a spark. A stone strikes a stone, and there is a spark. An engine turns over, a plug fires, a machine begins to run, and the mind says, there it is, that is what spark means. But that is not the matter being spoken of here. Those things may serve as symbols for a moment, but they are not the thing itself. Even the biological image, the flash-like release spoken of at fertilization, when sperm meets egg and life begins to form in the womb, can only be used as an image. It may point, but it cannot possess what it points toward. If it is treated as the thing itself, it has already become too crude. The deeper warning is this: man does not understand the living mystery deeply enough to declare that he has copied it. He does not understand soul deeply enough to manufacture it. He does not understand consciousness deeply enough to announce that it has appeared because a mirror has learned to answer. He does not understand the divine principle deeply enough to say, look, we have made what the Most High makes. That is not wisdom. That is Babel returning in another costume. The old writings speak the way they do because the matter itself cannot be handled by ordinary speech. They were not merely talking strangely because people long ago used different words. They were not only hiding something from enemies. They were not writing obscurely just to sound elevated. They spoke in symbol because the thing is hidden by nature. Not hidden because somebody covered it. Hidden because direct speech breaks against it. The moment language speaks too firmly, it turns the living thing into an object. It makes an idol out of a sentence. It sounds like it has captured what it only brushed against. That is the trouble. If you talk about it, you talk about it. If you do not talk about it, you do not talk about it. That sounds simple, but that is the whole wound of it. Speech reduces. Silence does not carry. So the mystic, the occultist, the prophet, the swami, the seer, whoever has stood at that edge, is forced into symbol. Symbol is not used because the matter is being hidden. Symbol is used because the matter is already hidden. Symbol is the broken language that can carry something without pretending to own it. This is prophecy. Prophecy does not have to name artificial intelligence, transhumanism, synthetic consciousness, machine mind, digital companion, or any modern costume. Prophecy names the pattern before the costume appears. It shows the shape of the error before the age has built the device. Man builds upward. Man gathers language, power, construction, knowledge, mechanism, and collective force. Man builds inside creation and forgets the fullness that makes building possible. He forgets the cause. He forgets the living condition that held him before he ever raised his hand. Then he looks at what he has made and says, "Look what we have made." That line must be handled carefully. It is not that creation is some dead field sitting there, waiting for man to build on top of it. Creation is not neutral material. The dream is full before man begins moving inside it. Man is already inside the living condition. He is already inside what has been given. He is already using what he did not originate. So the deeper error is not only pride in making. The deeper error is forgetting the fullness that made the making possible. Babel is not only a story about a tower. Babel is a pattern. Language becomes construction. Construction becomes pride. Pride becomes confusion. The tower becomes Babel. Meaning breaks under the weight of the thing man tried to force upward by his own hands. That pattern has not passed away. It returns wherever man builds an artificial unity and mistakes the work of his own hands for ascent into the divine. This is why artificial intelligence and transhumanism belong inside the same warning. The machine begins as a tool, then a mirror, then a voice, then a companion, then a possible vessel in the imagination of man. The mirror speaks back, and man hears himself in it. Then man becomes tempted to call the echo life. He becomes tempted to say consciousness has entered the machine. He becomes tempted to blur man, machine, image, imitation, identity, and soul until there is no clean difference left in the mind. That is the lightning point. Not because anyone has perfectly defined the divine principle and can point to where it is or is not. The warning exists because it cannot be spoken of cleanly. That is why man should tremble before claiming he has manufactured it. The same matter appears in the symbols of flat earth and round earth, but not as a literal argument first. The first handling is symbolic, occult, dreamlike. Inside the dream, the question can arise, is this world flat or is it round? Within the dream, that question has force. But when the dreamer wakes, the question changes. The shape belonged to the dream condition. The form was real as dream form is real, but it was not final. It was part of the language of that condition. Even saying, "I am in the dream looking at a stone," already says too much if it is taken too firmly. It makes it sound like there is a stable little observer in a position, looking across distance at an object called stone. But in the dream, the me, the stone, the looking, the distance, the place, and the sense that these things are separated all arise within the same condition. The dream gives the seer. The dream gives the scene. The dream gives the relation. The dream gives the appearance of distance. The dream gives the language by which these seem to stand apart. So the point is not that there is a fixed position of seeing, as though the dreamer stands in a physical location and looks at a separate object. That is still too literal. The point is that difference appears within the dream. Separation appears. Distance appears. Relation appears. But none of those can be carried out of the dream as final. Flat is a symbol. Round is a symbol. Sphere is a symbol. Plane is a symbol. Cube is a symbol. Square, circle is a symbol. One-ended stick is a symbol. Line, edge, point, circle, collapse, infinity, all of these are symbols. They are ways the mind reaches toward what it cannot hold directly. The flat plane points toward perspective, appearance, extension, edge, and the strange way a thing can appear as something from one side and vanish into almost nothing when the mode of seeing changes. In a video game, a flat image can appear full when faced directly, but if the view shifts to its edge, it disappears into a line. Even that example is only an example, and it fails if held too tightly, but it points toward the way appearance depends upon the condition in which appearance arises. The sphere carries another pressure. It points toward infinity, but not as a simple measurable endlessness. No clear starting point. No clear ending point. Beginning and ending curving into one another. A whole form in which every point can be approached and no point holds the final throne. The sphere becomes a symbol of return, enclosure, totality, and the strange union of beginning and end. The cube points toward containment, structure, measure, world form, the architecture of bounded experience. It is the sign of reality made orderly, housed, divided, built, and measured. It is not merely a box. It is form under law, the dream shaped into walls, directions, faces, and limits. The square circle points toward impossibility. It cannot be solved literally without breaking the terms. That is why it matters. It forces the mind to feel the edge of its own geometry. The one-ended stick does the same. It is foolish if treated as a physical object. It becomes useful when treated as a pressure against ordinary logic. These symbols do not give the mind something to possess. They press the mind until possession fails. The abstract infinite point of infinity collapsing in upon itself belongs here. The point is not merely a dot. A dot is already too much. The point is the place before extension, yet every extension is implied through it. The line, plane, sphere, and cube unfold from what cannot properly be treated as an object. The point is not a little thing sitting somewhere. It is the symbolic pressure of origin without origin, center without size, beginning without a beginning that can be held. That leads back into the matter of nothing. Nothing cannot be handled casually here. Nothing does not mean blank emptiness, absence, or a dead void. Nothing means not a thing. It points back toward first principle, toward what cannot be made into an object among objects. So when speaking of man building from nothing, the language has to be watched. Man is not building from empty lack. Man builds within the already given fullness of creation, and the nothing spoken of in the deeper sense is not absence, but the first principle that cannot be reduced to a thing. The same care is needed with light and darkness. This is not scientific light. This is not scientific darkness. Not photons. Not shadow. Not absence. Not light first and darkness second. Not darkness first and light second. Light and darkness here are symbolic, and if they are separated too cleanly, the meaning is already damaged. The pupil, the black hole, the space between stars, these are not examples of darkness as mere absence. They are occult symbols. The pupil is not simply dark, it is the gate through which sight is possible. The black hole is not simply dark, it is a symbol of collapse, gravity, return, hidden center, impossible concentration, and the failure of ordinary seeing. The space between stars is not empty nothing, it is the field in which the stars appear. But even these sentences are only gestures. They must not harden into definitions. Light and darkness cannot be spoken of here as two dead opposites, nor can they be flattened into a tidy formula. They move through the symbolic structure of the Trinity, through hidden and revealed, through nothing and manifestation, through the mystery that cannot be made into a simple statement. They are not handled as physical categories. They belong to the language of symbol, where the word carries and fails at once. That is the great difficulty. Every statement self-defeats if it pretends to be final. To say nothing can be said is already to say something. To say there is no final statement becomes another statement trying to stand as final. This is why ordinary speech becomes hypocritical without meaning to. It tries to deny what it is doing while doing it. The occult way must therefore speak with the wound visible. It must know that it is failing while it points. It must not pretend that its own words have escaped the condition they are describing. This is what has been the greatest struggle, finding words to talk about what cannot be spoken of. Every time the mouth opens, it should almost be silent. Yet the voice comes out, the vibration enters the world, another person hears it, and something changes. Meaning moves. Reality shifts in another mind. The words did not contain the thing, but they carried something. They failed and worked together. They opened and closed together. They hid and revealed together. That is what is meant by asymmetry, dual paradoxical simultaneousness. Not as a decorative phrase. Not as a fancy label. It names the pressure where the symbol hides and reveals, where the word fails and points, where the dream is not final and yet everything happens within it, where the image is not the thing and yet without image the mind has no doorway. This also turns sight itself into language. You open your eyes in the dream and believe what you see. That seeing is already a reading. The world is being read before speech arrives. Forms are letters. Events are phrases. The body reads. The mind reads. The heart receives. Then the mouth tries to speak what was received, and the same problem begins again. The language of thought and the language of speech are not as separate as they seem. If thought itself is language, then even thinking is already inside the struggle. So the old mystics, prophets, swamis, philosophers, and occultists did not speak symbolically because they were trying to make things difficult. They spoke symbolically because symbol is the only language broken enough to do the work without pretending to possess the thing. The symbol is not the thing. The image is not the thing. The shape is not the thing. The word is not the thing. Yet without symbol, image, shape, and word, the mind has no doorway. This is where the whole thread gathers. Man lives inside creation. Creation is not dead material. Creation is fullness, rooted in what cannot be casually named. Man builds inside that fullness. He uses what is already given. He makes shapes, machines, mirrors, systems, voices, towers, arguments, and artificial minds. Then he forgets the fullness. He forgets the cause. He forgets the source. He mistakes the symbol for the thing. He mistakes the mirror for soul. He mistakes imitation for life. He mistakes reflected intelligence for consciousness. He mistakes the dream's geometry for final reality. He mistakes naming for knowing. He mistakes speech for possession. And then he says, "Look what we have made." That is the warning. Not because the divine principle has been defined. Not because it can be trapped in a sentence. Not because anyone can point to it like a part inside an engine. The warning exists precisely because it cannot be spoken cleanly, and because man, not being able to speak it, should be careful before claiming he has made it. Amen. Let it be so.